Hi, everyone. This is how to walk into any room and get your message across confidently. I'm really pleased to have a special guest today. Anne and I are going to have a discussion about how to walk into any room and get your message across effectively and confidently. Just a bit about myself, and then Anne can let us know all the fantastic things that she does as well. My name is Esther Brule. I'm a speech and language therapist or speech and language pathologist. Quite a while ago, I used to have a whole lot of people walk into my clinic saying, because I'm obviously from Australia, from my accent, a whole lot of people walk in and say, we're having very great trouble getting our message across or getting a job, because when we get into an interview, our accent is fairly thick. We have a lot of people from different places in Australia, and we're not getting the jobs or the promotion that we want. We're not feeling very confident about how we're speaking because our first language is not English and we have an accent. So I developed some courses, online courses, where people can learn to speak and pronounce more clearly with an American, a British, or an Australian accent. And we also have one-on-one coaching for people if you want to have specialised coaching for these sorts of things. So that's pretty well me. I'll throw in bits and pieces of information as we go along. But Anne, please let us know about you, 3 key elements, and whatever else you do as well. Just before you do, I wanted to say to everybody that the collaboration, I'm quite excited about this collaboration, because we're both coming at communication and how to communicate effectively in all situations in your life. And we're going to add slightly different things. So I think this is going to be very interesting. Please go ahead, Anne. Please introduce yourself.
You bet. Well, I obviously have the American accent. So when we're in the American West accent, so we'll get to hear that one. And then we get to hear Esther's lovely Australian accent. I am in Utah in the United States, and my name is Ann Washburn, and I'm a body language and behavior expert. I am also a professional speaker, a trainer, a coach, and a mentor. And I help people being able to become the best version of themselves and improve all the relationships in their life, because we are the common denominator of every relationship. And we have relationships with people, we have relationships with finances, we have relationships with our house, we have relationships, anything that we interact with is one of our relationships. And, it's kind of interesting. My background and my training, I am a mechanical engineer who got into the world of training by accident. Because what happened was, as an engineer, I worked in flight simulation and explosives. And I didn't know how to communicate very well with people. And I didn't know why I was always in trouble. I'm like, I know that I know how to speak, because my parents, they're both school teachers. So they made sure that I was very good at talking. But I was not very good at confidence. And so I got into the world of body language because I needed to understand what were the messages I was sending to people that were not coming out of my mouth. Because when the messages that are coming out of our mouth don't match the words and the messages coming from our body language, people will discount what we say to believe what they see. And so I completely changed my career 12 years ago because I wanted to help people have the skills that helped me completely up-level every relationship in my life. And so to be able to have this chance to talk today and, really give people some confidence cues and skills, this is going to be really a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Well, let's start with, what are your tips for getting your message across effectively?
So the thing to know about when you walk into a room is that that people have decided who you are before you ever open your mouth. And so when you walk into a room, people have made a judgment about you. And that judgment is one of the things that we fear. As humans, we fear judgment. We fear criticism. And so when we walk into a room, people have already decided if they want to listen to us or what they're going to think of what we have to say. And so statistically, what happens if you make a bad first impression, it's going to take up to 10 good impressions to erase that bad first impression from somebody's memory. But the opposite's also true. If you make a good first impression, it's going to take several mess ups before you've erased that good first impression. So sending that good first impression is very vital for being able to get your message across confidently and effectively.
Yes, very true. We all have our lens through which we see people or judge people. And for instance, the people that we work with, mainly the English as a second language people, often they're already feeling a little bit not confident because they're not being clear. Yep. And that's already the lens. So we have people we work with who are clear. They still have an accent, but they're clear. And that's their thing that they walk in with. Because I know sometimes you say, if I'm feeling, I'm a bit fat or I'm a bit overweight or a bit whatever, that's the thing that'll be key in my mind when I first walk in there. That's the thing that I'm, seeing the world through. And for our clients that we work with, often it is that they feel unsure of themselves because they have an accent. And some of them actually are quite clear, and they just need a little bit of help to be more confident that they are clear and that they're fine. And some of them actually do have quite a strong accent and people can't understand them, especially if they're on the phone or they're speaking quickly. Because on the phone, you don't have those visual cues that we talk about, like the body language, the whatever, to help enhance the message that we're getting across as well.
Although what's interesting about that is I actually train a lot of call centers. And one of the things that I'll tell them is that the way you're sitting or standing is going to come across in your tone of voice. Yes. And so even though we can't see it, and so as a coach, what's interesting is I'm unique because I can see things that are being said in people's body language. I don't have to wait for their words in order to know where and what their programming is that's trying to shut them down.
Yes.
This is why I was asked to do a TED Talk a few years ago on body language and your subconscious, because we can access that subconscious programming by changing our body language. And so if I'm on the phone and I'm like laying on the couch and like this, my voice tone is going to be very different than if I'm sitting up and alert and put my chin up and I remember to breathe. Yes. So to answer this question, what are our tips for getting your message across effectively? I would say, first of all, is to breathe. Because and I'm sure that's going to be one of your first tips too, Esther, because in the body language world, one of the things I'm always watching for is when people stop breathing. They don't even realize they do it, but they'll hold their breath. And one of the first places you can see this is give somebody a compliment. Very often when people receive a compliment, they will hold their breath because they're trying not to let that compliment go inside of them. And so that was one of the things that I had people at my TED Talk do, is I had them notice the compliments, because people will push it away. You give them a compliment and they'll say, "Oh, thank you." Or they'll hold their breath, or they'll close their eyes because they're disconnecting, because their belief in their programming doesn't match the compliment. They don't believe it. And one of the biggest pieces of the recipe of confidence is belief. And so if I don't believe that my message can come across effectively, I will send that out through my body language. Yes. My cells in my body want to match what's going on in my head. So the cells in my body are looking to the head going, okay, what does she believe? Oh, she believes that she can't be heard. Okay, let's match. And so we can work the other way too and go, well, I want the brain to believe. And so it's like, well, what does belief look like? Well, in body language, it looks like shoulders. When we get nervous, we will hunch our shoulders. So it's bringing the shoulders down to level. It's bringing the chin up, because when we're not confident, we shrink, we become smaller. So putting our shoulders up, putting our chin up, and remembering to breathe are the first steps to a good first impression and getting your message across effectively.
Great tips. Fantastic. Yeah. And this is, whether you have an accent, whether you don't, whatever, if you're presenting, even when you're walking into a room socially, whatever it is, that is so fantastic. And we're so unaware often of how we are physically, being in that sense. And exactly with the programming that we have, that just gives us, how we physically present as well. Yeah, I so agree. And that breathing is really important because, first of all, it relaxes all the muscles if you breathe properly. And if you breathe especially into the lower part of your rib cage and you put your hands, put your hands here and, you feel it coming out and in. You don't have to overdo it. But that's where you actually support all the muscles and everything when you breathe into that area. And then you relax as well. And then you get that whole shoulder relax and everything. Yeah. And the other interesting thing, as a quick aside, is when I have to speak with a British accent, I actually have to sit up more because I have to open here to get the resonance. And and that's part of, okay, this is a different mindset. This is a belief that I'm going to step into that accent. And to do that, I have to change how I'm physically being. And the same with actors. For instance, when you want to, you can put on an American accent, for instance, but if your body isn't doing what Americans do, because there's a different way that Americans hold themselves and move themselves to Australians, to British people, then there's going to be that dissonance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that breathing thing also allows you to, A, relax, B, set your whole physical body up better, like you were saying. But it also allows, if you're presenting, and you'll go into the rest of that body language for that, I'm sure, in a minute. But if you're presenting, it allows you to have enough air to do the correct pauses, to stress the words that you want to stress in a sentence so that you're stressing the words that are giving across the main meaning. And English listeners, if we're talking about speaking English here, English listeners listen for the words that are stressed, not the de-stressed words particularly. And just a quick aside on English and pronunciation, English words, we link them together. And so it sounds like you've got these very long words going on. And if you don't take enough air, you will run out of air and then won't be able to keep up that chin up, the shoulders down. You'll start, I've got to go quickly and lose the whole sort of confident presentation. So, breath control is really important. And if you notice one quick last thing, and then that is when presenters present, they're taking a quick breath into the abdomen like that in between everything, when they have a little pause at the end of each phrase, the bits that they want you to pay attention to, just like that. A quick one into here to give you a lot more air rather than, and the whole chest and shoulder thing goes up. Anyway, that's a bit on breath control.
So what are your tips? Let's break it down into 3 tips.
Sure.
If somebody is wanting to get their message across, give them 3 tips.
Yeah, so the 3 tips are you start to learn how to breathe more deeply and learn to pause so that your audience can, in between things that you're saying, in between the phrases. If you notice, I've just stopped there to have a quick pause and breathe and then keep going. And the pausing also allows your audience to take things in. So that allows you also to be more confident because it's giving you time to think as well. So that's another tip. And the other thing is, if you're using your breath properly, you can emphasize words in the sentences that you want people to hear. And I'm overdoing it, obviously, but That's
how we practice.
Yeah.
Because we always have to practice bigger than the actual performance, because our brain is wired that when we think people are watching us, we speed up and we shrink and we play smaller. It's just how our brain is wired, because for that social acceptance, that's what we do. And so your tips: breathe into the abdomen. And then the second one was to pause.
Pause in between each phrase, in between each piece of information you give. Right. In the sentence.
Because people are afraid when they have any kind of fear, they fear silence. And so they will speak over their pauses instead of taking their pause. And then the third one, go ahead,
was to make sure that you're getting your message across by stressing the words that carry the main meaning, not the and the of and the to and the and. They're not, yes, you have to have them there grammatically, but they're not important for the main. What do you want people to hear? And those are the words that you emphasize or stress. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. So then let's move to this then, Esther.
Yeah.
So if that's how you get your message across effectively, how do we prepare ahead of time in order to be able to give that message effectively? What would be 3 tips to prepare ahead of time?
Yeah. First of all, it is to actually, if it's let's say the different categories, if it's a presentation, if you're chairing a meeting, if you're going for a job interview or some sort of interview, if you're wanting to contribute in a meeting, because some people are very fearful of contributing inside of a meeting, just putting their idea to everybody. If you're, even if you're just talking socially and you want to prepare to have some things that you want to say, preparation is incredibly important. For each of those different ones, preparation is slightly different, but you need to know your topic. You need to know how to pronounce, from my point of view, the technical words. If you're going for an interview and it's in some field where there are technical words that you need to be able to say, so you need to practice pronouncing those. I mean, as far as we're concerned, if it's something very specific like that, you can get coaching from us, one-on-one coaching, as well as using our online courses to be clearer. But some people do that. They get coaching. Oh, I've got an interview in whatever weeks. These are the words I can't say clearly, even though they're in my profession. So, yeah.
Or especially because they're in my profession.
Especially because they're in my profession. But that preparation, I would write stuff out. Practice saying it in front. First tip, practice saying it in front of a mirror. Make sure that you're going slowly enough. It's okay. And as you said, we speed up as we get nervous. We shut down breathing as we get nervous. Make sure that you're going slowly enough. It's okay to speak English more slowly, because a lot of other languages, they're very, 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 very quick. Don't be afraid. People won't think you're stupid. They will just be able to understand you. You're doing them a favor by allowing them to be able to hear what you have to say properly. And even socially, you can listen to the radio or whatever, the TV, and get some topics, or get a topic you're interested in, find out a few facts about it. You could throw that into the conversation and see if people want to talk about it. So my main tip there is be prepared, write it out, organize it. If you're going for a presentation, obviously you've got to write it out, organize it, practice it over and over so you know the content. Then you add all of those things, which is here throwing over to you, of the actual physical presentation as well. And what other tips would you have for that as well?
So I love that. So I wrote down, know your topic, practice your pronunciation, and write out your material.
Yeah.
Were the 3 tips for being really prepared.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. So the first tip that I have would probably come across as a surprise. So what I would suggest is, when you're getting ready for a presentation, even up to 3 days before. Maybe it's an interview, maybe it's you're chairing a meeting, like you said, maybe it's a big presentation, maybe you're speaking on a stage in front of 1,000 people. Practice smiling a lot and smile until your cheeks hurt. Smile. And it's like, well, okay, Anne, that's like one piece of body language, but what about the rest? Well, hang on. Smiling is powerful. In fact, there's a whole segment of psychology that only studies smiling. And the reason you want to smile and smile a lot is it's actually going to change the neurotransmitters in your brain. Because like I said before, the cells in your body are paying attention to your brain. When I coach people, I'm helping them to upgrade their thinking, upgrade their emotions, and upgrade their actions so that they can get any result that they choose. And so when we smile, in fact, let me illustrate with a couple of studies. There was a study that was done where they took a bunch of people and divided them into 3 groups. And what they had them do was they had them just do some simple keying in on a keyboard. They had to, well, with one hand, they had to key in certain patterns and they had to practice these patterns. And the first group, so they did the control where they just had them do it and see how fast they could do it. Now, the first group now had to perform the task while smiling. The second group had to perform it while frowning. And the third group had to perform it while they had a chopstick between their teeth, because that was forcing a smile. Because they were also measuring, did it matter if it was a real smile versus a forced smile? And so what they found was the group that had to perform with a smile performed way better than the group that performed with a frown. And the group that performed with the chopstick was just barely less than the one that performed with the real smile.
Interesting.
And since then, they've performed all kinds of experiments. They've done all kinds of research on performance, like in running or in sports or in other things. And they find that people who will smile, especially like if you're running long distance, if they'll smile in the last little bit before the finish line, it actually improves their final performance.
Wow.
And so smiling is telling your body how you want to feel when you go into that presentation. And since our mind and our body are connected, if we keep smiling, we keep telling our brain, I want to feel happy in this presentation. I want to have a good outcome. And so tip number 1 is smile, and smile a lot. Because just like we've already highlighted, when you come into the actual presentation, you'll forget. You won't smile because it isn't a natural habit for most of us. It's not for me. Most of us don't look in the mirror in the morning and smile and go, here I am. Most of us look in the mirror in the morning and go, That's how we usually look in the mirror. That's how we program ourselves. Our brain is a computer, but we keep programming our computer to feel bad about ourselves. And so if we want to feel good in our presentation, we got to start before the presentation, programming ourselves to feel good about ourselves. When I first started into the speaking world and had to be recorded, I hated the sound of my voice. And I was like, this doesn't sound anything like me. And most people, the first time they hear a recording of themselves, they hate the recording.
Yeah, because we hear ourselves through bone conduction and air conduction.
Right.
And so our voice sounds lower to ourselves. But when we hear ourselves in the recording,
it sounds richer. Yeah. It sounds richer inside of our head.
Yes, because of the bone.
The solution to that is to listen to your recordings more, not less. And what we usually do is we go, and we go into our programming of not liking ourselves and fear of criticism. And as soon as we're in that programming of not liking ourselves and fear of criticism, we shut down. So our thoughts and our emotions change our actions, and we shut down instead of doing what would get us the result. So we have to manage those thoughts and emotions. And so if we smile a lot, we're helping ourselves get used to it. If we listen to recordings of ourselves, we get used to it. And then we get to where we like it. So before COVID, almost all of my presentations were live in front of in front of large audiences. And so I was always speaking into a cheek mic. And when I would get home, I would get frustrated that I couldn't hear myself over the speakers because I'd gotten so used to listening. But now I still do a lot of live presentations, but I do a lot of online presentations. And so I don't use my cheek mic on online presentations, but I have learned to like the sound of my voice on the recording instead of dislike it. And anything we can do to help ourselves increase our belief in ourselves, in who we are, will increase our confidence. And so that's why my first tip is smile. And the second one is we want to practice big body language. So like I said, when we're nervous, we'll shrink. So at home, walk around with bigger shoulders than you would walk around in front of other people. Walk around with your chin up higher, and your tailbone, you want to kick it out like you're strutting your stuff. And because all of that is training you. It's not like you're going to walk into your presentation like that.
No,
your brain will check you at the door. It'll be fine. But practice the big body language. And one of the ones that we forget is our hands and our fingers. Because when we're nervous, this is one of the things when I'm mentoring people, I ask them questions and I listen for their answer, but I watch their answers. And one of the first things that I pay attention to is their fingers, because they don't pay attention to them. They don't pay attention to their fingers or their feet. So I watch their fingers and their feet because every finger sends a different message in body language. And so if you know what finger they're rubbing, you have an idea of what's bothering them in their programming. So we get used to playing and picking at our fingers or rubbing them, and we don't think anybody's noticing. So when you're getting ready for your presentation, practice having calm fingers, because calm fingers will also tell your brain, my programming can be calm. So smile a lot, big body language, calm fingers. 3 points.
Fantastic. I love it. To do with the big body language, it's interesting because what I often also train people to do is move their mouth more, because that's part of big body language. If I'm presenting, or even if I'm in a social situation, whichever, or an interview, I need to allow my mouth to be open enough for the resonance to come out, first of all. If I'm talking like this and I'm not opening my mouth much, you can still understand me, but it really isn't very confident at all. And you're not coming in as centered. So that's one thing. But the other part of moving your mouth more is again, just skewing across to the population of people who come with a different background language. And that is often those languages you don't have to move your mouth as much as for English. So for English, E is like this, oo is like that, ah is like that. I'm overdoing it at the moment. But I teach people to say, again, going back to their point, when they're practicing what they want to say in the mirror, I ask them to overdo it, again, because when they get into the actual situation, they will be feeling whatever. And so if they've practiced it enough, they'll still be open enough, but less. So that's one of the things. It's
Another
interesting
thing that people, when you talk about practicing in the enunciation, I've had people that I'm coaching on how to speak on stage or in front of at a presentation, and I will have them go through their presentation with no speech. And I'll say, go through your entire presentation and you think through it, but don't have any speech. Practice your body language, because people it's like breathing. So our breathing is unique in that we can have conscious control over our breathing. But when we quit thinking about it, we still breathe. Our body won't let us stop breathing. Well, your body language is the same way. You can take conscious control of your body language, but when you quit paying attention to it, it's going to send the messages that match your default programming.
Yes.
And so I teach people about their emotional coping styles that they got from their childhood, because those emotional coping styles are going to lead to their programming in their brain. And those messages will come out in your body language when you're not paying attention to your body language. Mm. So you can practice your presentation silently and then practice it in front of the mirror with no body language. You can practice them separately, and you'll be so ready for your presentation. People will be like, who is this person?
I think that's brilliant, that idea of practicing it two different ways, but one of them being just in your head, but you're actually paying attention to what you're doing with your body. That's really a great tip. I love that. I had a gentleman who was from one of the Asian countries, and he was going for a position for a huge multinational company. He was going for an interview, and he was going for the position of being the manager of the whole of the marketing for the Asia Pacific region, whole Asia Pacific region. And he'd already been in management positions before. And we'd worked on his speech because he came from a country where there are a lot of sounds in that original language, in English, that don't exist in that original language. So we had to deal with all of that first. Then we started to deal with how he was actually presenting physically as well. And what would happen would be he wouldn't smile, going back to your point. He just wouldn't smile. And he was a really nice guy. And when you were just chatting with him, he would smile. But when we were sort of practicing the interview and all of that, and how was he having his body and all the different bits like that, he wasn't smiling and he was gulping. He was like this, like trying to take in air because he was feeling so tense, Mm-hmm. And so going back to that, he eventually got it. He's now the manager of Asia Pacific for this massive company that's a worldwide well-known company. I'm not going to mention the name right now. But we also had to work on all of those things that you're talking about, which is so important. It's all communication.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And humans are we're very unique with our big brains and how we process things. We are able to communicate way more than the speed of our speech. Because in communication, there's the words, there's the tone of the words, and there's the body language. And the reason we have all three is because our brains want more information than just monotone words. Our brains need it. They crave it, because that's what sets us apart from the animal kingdom, is the size of that big brain. And so if we're not paying attention to the different, I call it the three voices of communication, the words, the tone, and the body language. If we don't pay attention to all three of them, we miss out not only on how we communicate with people, but we miss out on our ability to upgrade ourselves. Because another driving force of humans is to be able to be better than who we were. And we'll say things like, we want to get farther ahead than our parents did. We want to be better than so-and-so. We have a driving force of being better than who we were. But if we don't pay attention to this, it takes a lifetime to upgrade. It's a shortcut when you can learn to communicate, not just with others, but when you can learn to communicate with your own subconscious programming. Yes. Now you become a different person. Yes. Because very often people, my brother recently ran into somebody that I graduated from high school with. And this guy asked my brother what I'm doing. And when my brother told him, this guy wouldn't believe him. He goes, no, I'm talking about Anne. And he goes, well, yeah, so am I. He goes, well, she would never do anything like that. Nobody believes that I am who I am today. And when I tell them how I used to be, I was so afraid of people, Esther, that I could not go into a grocery store and ask the helper there what aisle the bread was on. I could not do it. I was so afraid of people. I literally could not ask a question at the store. Mm-hmm. And people don't believe that about me. They're like, oh, there's no way. There's no way you've got all this confidence and you speak all these places and you've got millions of views on YouTube or whatever. It's like, no, that's who I was. But the shortcut to the upgrade is the communication with others and the communication with self.
With ourselves.
And we have to have both.
Yeah. And we have to be those communications and being aware, pulling them in front of us, having a look at what we're doing, exactly what we're talking about, all those different tips to have a look at. They're the practical ways you can start to get into that and go, well, what am I really doing? Do I flap my arms about? Do I hunch my, whatever it is? Yeah. Do I not use cadence? Intonation is also important because in English it carries meaning. Well, in most languages it carries meaning, but in English even more. You know, if you say, Esther, are you coming to my party? And I go, yes. Or I go, yes. Or I go, yeah.
It says a totally different way more meaning.
Yeah.
My father's a linguist, so he teaches many foreign languages. He speaks many languages. I only speak 2. Well, I speak 3 when you count body language. So I speak body language, but I also speak English and French. And my husband speaks English and Spanish. And he always jokes that the reason the Spanish people speak so fast is they have so many syllables they have to get out. And the reason the French have that gargle sound in their language is because they cut off the ends of all the words. All of it is sending messages. But the piece that we forget is that all of this sends messages back to ourselves. We are so afraid of criticism. We're so afraid of whether or not people will like me. We're so afraid of whether or not people will listen to us that we program ourselves with that belief that they won't listen.
Yeah.
And so I have a tip that doesn't fit in necessarily our questions here. But one of the things that helped me when I couldn't ask a question at the store is I had decided to step into the world of, I ended my engineering career in favor of being a public speaker. It was like, what are you thinking, Anne? And I'm like, I don't know, but I've got to do this. Yeah. And so I found myself, I now had to ask companies if they would like me to come speak for them. I was too afraid to ask where the bread was at the grocery store. So what I learned to do was I would sit in my car and I would say out loud declarations about the people that I was going to go talk to. So I would say things like, they are so excited that I'm here today. The people in there are excited to have me come speak for them. Those people love me. And it doesn't change those people. But what we're really afraid of is what we think others think about us. Yes. We're not afraid of what they actually think. We're afraid of what we think they think. Yes. And so one of the things that we can do is, so for example, I use this with my children. I was like, I need to change my relationship with my children. So I would tell myself before I walked in the room to interact with my kids, I would tell myself out loud, my kids think I'm the best mom. My kids are so glad that they're my kids. I would say those kinds of things because we're willing to believe things about other people before we're willing to believe things about ourselves.
Yes.
And
we're willing to believe stuff about ourselves that is so negative. Yes. I mean, that's just what we're willing to do. Yeah.
Well, It's not even willing. It's actually, if you study the neuroscience of the brain, we're actually wired. They've done studies where they've put people in MRI machines, and we're actually wired to pay 3 times more attention to the negative about ourselves than the positive. Yes. And so we have to give ourselves 3 positives for every negative.
And they're saying now that they feel it's partly because we needed to look for all the dangers and the things that the early brain, when we were not, earlier, way back.
Before us.
Yeah, before us. We had to keep looking for the dangers in the environment, the tiger or the whatever was going to happen.
Well, it's also because we're wired for sociality. We need social to survive.
Yes. 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 And it's really interesting that we tend to have this idea that there are certain people who are charismatic, and there are some people who are a little bit, more whatever it is, but everybody can learn to be confident and communicate clearly, So you're a great example of it. I know when I heard you say in your talk that you were an engineer and now look at you, I went, oh, she's come a very long way in the way that she communicates. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
for sure. Because it changes us. And that's our goal, right? We want to be, I wrote this down, that our goal is we want to be listened to, and we want to be included, and we want to be influential.
Yes.
And we want to be interesting. And so if those are our goals, communication is the shortcut.
Yes, definitely.
What do you do when you're in the middle of an interview or a presentation and something goes sideways? What do you do to recover?
I think one of the things to do is to actually just say, listen, this is what, in a good way, not to actually be straight with the people, to sort of say, oh, hang on, I'm having a bit of a technical glitch, or hang on, because again, that's part of communication. We're human. Do you know what I mean? And
we are.
And it's part of being confident, because if you're sort of going, or whatever, or you just go silent, people won't know. You're still not communicating what's happening for you. And people, I think, are quite forgiving if they know what's going on. So what I've done is I've said, oh, hang on, there's just a bit of a technical glitch, or hang on, I need to just think about that for a minute. I think it's okay to say those things, because you're still communicating where you're at, and you're still being confident about the fact that, hey, that's okay. I'm okay,
Yeah, if you own mistakes, people connect to you more. Because they feel like, oh, I've made mistakes. I can connect to this person.
Yeah. And if it's about speech, if you're having trouble saying a word, I have people who joke about it, which is great. It diffuses it, and they go, oh, that word, I always find that word so hard to say. And whether you have an accent or you don't have an accent, or you're whatever, we all have trouble with some words. There are some words that have a lot of syllables in them that we find difficult, and that's why earlier I said, if you are going for an interview or a presentation or anything where there are long technical words, practice them so that you can actually get your muscle memory and your motor planning and your physical planning of your mouth around it. It's just practice.
We have to do that even if it isn't our second language.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And what would you say? What would you answer to that question? Was there?
So I would say one of the things that we have to understand is why we fear having people look at us is that we actually have energy that goes between us when we're talking to people. This is why if there's more people, it's more scary, because it's like double the eyeballs, and it's more energy being looked at us. And so if we get nervous and start to freeze up, one of the things from a body language perspective that can help, and this works even if you're in a confrontation with a single person, because what riles us up is that energy going back and forth between us. And so if you will take and turn a quarter turn, if you'll just turn a quarter turn, it actually causes the energy that's coming at you to go all across your shoulder instead of go through you.
Quarter
and
turn.
so
That's brilliant.
just a quarter turn, because people won't notice a quarter turn. If you turn away from them, they're going to notice that. But they're not going to notice a quarter turn. But you will feel the difference. You'll feel the difference, because I will train companies, I will train management in how to diffuse confrontation. And that's one of the things that I'll tell them is just take a quarter turn. Either if they're too intense for you, or if you can tell you're too intense for them, you turn a quarter turn, and it will help them not feel as much energy coming at them. And it's a powerful
I love that
technique.
I love that one. That's really great. That's really,
And I would add to it the fingers again. When we get nervous, we clench our fists. Undo your fists. Let your fingers come out freely. It also tells your brain it's okay. I'm safe. I can keep breathing. I can keep talking. But that quarter turn and then release, breathe. Those are three of the biggest things that can help us reground ourselves when we freeze up in the middle of a confrontation or a presentation.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. Oh, I love those ones. They're good. Yeah, because we need to have something physical and practical that we can do, as you said, to bring ourselves back, to go, oh, all right, I'm back. Here I am. I can keep going. Yeah.
So it really comes down to preparation. And,
Yes.
and once we've done the preparation, going in with belief. And once we go in with belief, what do I do if something goes sideways? If you can do those three things, you can walk confidently into any room.
Yeah. And in terms of speech-wise, if you prepare, which is part of that, to make yourself clear, and then as you're doing that, put all these other things into practice as well, then you won't have your audience going, oh, what was that word? And then missing everything else that you're starting to say after that, because they're so busy trying to understand you, they're not actually taking the whole message in properly. So that's, as I said, for those who really aren't very clear, but that's fantastic.
That because I love what you do, Esther, because helping people with the correct enunciation is that it's the words and the tone. So in communication, that's 36 plus 7. What's that? 43. That's 43% of the communication right there. And the key points there are so simple. It's prepare, practice, prepare, run it past people. My husband is a corporate business consultant. He consults all over the world, the management of companies. And he told me that one of the things that they do is they have pre-presentations. And I'm like, what's a pre-presentation? And it was really cool, Esther. And because what he said it is that if there's somebody that's going to be in this presentation that you're worried he called them the gorilla, if they could be the gorilla that will really throw off your presentation, invite them in and pre-present the presentation to them. Because if you do that, now you can work out their concerns ahead of time. And now when you're in the actual presentation, they're your biggest ally. And so pre-presentations really help with your confidence when you've gone into the room. And that can be part of the preparation. And then going in with belief. If you've smiled, if you've practiced the enunciation, if you practice the big body language, you're going to go in with more belief because you're upgrading those programs in your own subconscious. And then just know problems happen and I can solve them. And whatever it is, if I need to turn a quarter turn, if I need to take a breath, sometimes you need to close your eyes for a second, because closing your eyes can disconnect from the energy just long enough to get yourself moving again. And those 3 steps, you can walk with confidence if you do those 3 things.
Thank you very much. That's been so great. So fantastic to have you with, that we could have this conversation, because I've also learned quite a few things from it as well.
Across the whole world. This is so cool. I think we're like 17 hours apart or something. So I love that technology allows for these kinds of things, because ever since 2020, I actually have really delved into the world of mental wellness, because which isn't mental illness, it's mental wellness. It's stress resiliency, it's anxiety, it's being able to interact in the world around us. And all these things that we just talked about, people have forgotten to do ever since our strange post-COVID world happened. And so this is very timely that we were able to do this, Esther. And
I think so. And
thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And it's been wonderful talking with you. it's going to be great. Lots and lots of stuff for people here. It's really good. And it's also in a world that is moving faster and faster. Never mind COVID. It's being able to keep centering ourselves and feel confident and our belief in ourselves in a world that is demanding that we move faster and faster.
Yeah.
So I think that's another element in there. But it's been really wonderful talking to you. So where can people find you, and how would you like them to get in touch?
Oh, great question. So they can find me on YouTube. They can type my name in there. They can also go to 3keyelements.com, the number 3. And I'll give those to you so you can put them in the link.
Yeah, we'll put them in the link.
And how do people find you?
We have a YouTube channel, and I know you are also, if you look up you on a YouTube, people can find you as well.
Or 3 Key Elements, both.
Or 3 Key Elements, yeah. And we are on YouTube, Speak More Clearly, with lots and lots of training videos that people can just access for free. And our website, speakmoreclearly.com. And as you said before, all of these links will be in the description below the video.
And I would just say, I would love it if anybody uses these tips. Tell us in the comments. Tell us. Yeah, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because it's not a big wide world anymore. It's a little world. We can access people very quickly. So we need to connect. We need to help each other.
Yeah.
So let us know in the comments.
Yes, that'd be wonderful. That'd be excellent. And I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really great. Thank you.
Thank you.